Well, the Wedding Crashers, the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, is joining several conservative groups in opposition to a bill they say would hurt wedding barns and the couples who depend on them. Will Deputy Counsel Lucas Weber has the details now and joins us on the Vicki McKenna Show. Good afternoon, sir. How have you been?
Hey, good afternoon, Matt. I'm doing really well. I hope you and your listeners are doing well as well.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I'm glad we have a chance to catch up. And, of course, whenever we catch up on very important constitutional and legal matters, and this is no exception to that. Now, Lucas, help me out here because I just received, I'm not kidding you, right before you went on the air, I received an email from a pretty big coalition of players out there, from the booze industry and the resellers and all of that sort of thing. And it says a coalition of Wisconsin's alcohol industry is rallying around reform bill at a Senate public hearing. That hearing was today, am I correct?
That was, yep, this afternoon, or this morning and afternoon.
Okay. All right, so it's been going on for a while. This is the same bill. Now, this is the bill that they are lauding as the reform to the old three-tier system. This is going to streamline things. It's going to remove bureaucratic walls. You say, well, wait a minute, it is going to hurt some growing industries out there, a lot of small mom and pops, really, but this industry has taken off. Wedding barns, destination weddings, those kinds of things. How will this bill hurt those entities?
Yeah, so just to begin, the bill is humongous. It's 150 plus pages, and there's a ton of stuff in it that a lot of it's very good. We don't have an issue with, but unfortunately, in all of the wheeling and dealing that created that package, somewhere along the way, somebody cut a deal that said to advance their business interests, they were going to try to put wedding barns out of business. Wedding barns are an industry that's been under attack the past several sessions in Wisconsin. For some reason, some groups view them as competition, and they want to just shut that competition down. Here in Wisconsin, you need a liquor license in two instances. The first is obviously if you're selling alcohol, you need a license. The second is if you're consuming alcohol in a public place. Public place is not defined by state law. What this bill would do, and wedding barns have never been considered a public place. For decades, they've operated. The state has blessed that operation. Department of Revenue has explicitly said they're not a public place. What this bill does is it changes that definition of public place to cover wedding barns and other private spaces. For example, an Airbnb would be covered under this bill, and you wouldn't be able to drink alcohol at an Airbnb unless there are, quote, sufficient beds for all adult guests to sleep. I don't even know what that means.
Oh, you're kidding me.
But
that's weird. Actually,
yeah.
It's quite.
Yeah,
it's kind of like
Bob
and Ted and Alice, the 1970s show. It's kind of weird.
Well,
yeah.
Exactly. And are the revenue agents going to knock on the door and ask how many beds there are, and then count the number of adults to see if you're breaking the law or not? It's silly. And like I said, this is you've got this broad coalition out there that's pushing these changes. There's a lot of stuff in the bill that's completely unrelated to wedding barns. But unfortunately, as part of this whole horse trading process, they decided to target wedding barns, and this legislation will have the effect of essentially putting them out of business. What the bill does is it gives barns a few options. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask you. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I think it's important. Lucas Weber joining us, by the way, Deputy Counsel at the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, talking about this massive new reform legislation on the old three-tier system of alcohol sales and distribution, what have you, manufacturing. Here is, I guess, the question, the why. You've started to talk about that with competition, but do we know who is targeting these wedding barns?
Yeah, I mean, it's today at the hearing, it was the groups that were on that letter that you sent around. I mean, certainly the Tavern League was there supporting these proposals. And like I said, it's part of a broader package. There's a lot of stuff in this bill that many of the groups who are supporting it, don't even know about the wedding barns provision in the bill. I don't know, but unfortunately, what the bill does at the end of the day is it gives these barns essentially two choices. They can either become a tavern and try to get a license to be a tavern, or try to contract with somebody to get a license to become a tavern, or they can operate as what the bill creates a new license called a no-sale event venue, which means they can continue to operate as they have and not sell alcohol. But if they do that, they can only have 6 events per year and no more than 1 event per month. And at any of those events, and then no person at any of those events is allowed to consume liquor. So if you're at one of those events and you're getting married, you can't toast your spouse with an old-fashioned. That would be illegal under Wisconsin law, under this bill if it passed. It's
champagne.
The most bizarre thing.
Yeah.
It's just bizarre. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's bizarre, it's restrictive, and it seems to be, I think a lot of us would be against the free market, against real competition. I mean, and that's overall the concern, because you have some very big moneyed interest here trying to, within this massive bill you talk about, it feels like, and maybe somebody has a different take on this, but it feels like to me that this thing kind of got snuck in there. It's something we've been talking about for a lot. I remember, at Empower Wisconsin, when I was there at the MacIver Institute, we talked about that all the time because it was anti-competition. And I know that Will has expressed opinions on this in the past and concerns about it. Yep. It looked like this kind of thing was not going to happen in any reform measure the last I knew, and then all of a sudden it popped up. How did that happen?
We don't know. It was really part of this, there's this, like I said, this gigantic bill out there that was negotiated by all these parties, and at some point along the way, as I said, somebody cut a deal where they said, okay, I'll give on this, but you got to then destroy the wedding barns. And it's really unfortunate that happened, and I think hopefully the legislature here, it has already passed the Assembly. So now it's really up to the Senate to amend this bill. If we're going to protect the small businesses in Wisconsin, we need the Senate to amend that out of this legislation if it's going to move forward. And we're certainly hopeful that they do that.
Lucas Weber, Deputy Counsel for Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty. I guess the question is, it is August 17th, a Thursday in the middle of summer. Vicky's fishing, and so are many in the state of Wisconsin, enjoying the lake, vacationing. They're not paying attention to this sort of thing. So do you think that was the hope by some of these folks that a hearing would come down on a day in August when nobody is really focusing on this stuff?
I can't say for sure. It did seem like this bill was trying to be pushed very quickly when it was first introduced, had a hearing in the Assembly, passed the Assembly very fast. The Senate, to their credit, took a breath and slowed things down a little bit. So, hopefully common sense can prevail here, and enough Wisconsinites can reach out to their lawmakers and say, you shouldn't be using the heavy hand of government here to put farmers out of business and to put Airbnbs out of business. And, I don't want revenue agents showing up at my family reunion. I mean, this is kind of the nonsensical stuff that we just don't need government doing. And hopefully the legislature sees the light here and amends it.
Yeah, we don't want them checking our beds either, for the love of God. This is just insane. So then I guess the ultimate question, Lucas, is what can be done? What's the time frame on this? You had the public hearing today. The Senate eventually will vote on this. What can be done? When will the vote come down? Do we know?
Yeah, the next step would be, if they schedule one, would be a vote in the committee. The committee could amend the bill, but once the committee, does anything with the bill, it would then get forwarded to the full Senate. And then it's up to the Senate if they want to, adopt that amendment and send it back to the Assembly, or if they just adopt the bill as is and send it to the governor to sign. But there's no specific deadline on there except, the end of the legislative session next year sometime. But they don't have to do anything immediately, and nothing is scheduled immediately. So hopefully, as I said, there's some time here for common sense to prevail, for lawmakers to work on some of these amendments, and we're certainly hopeful that they will.
Who else is opposed to this beyond the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty?
Yeah, so we've actually got our own coalition that's out there. Some great groups here in Wisconsin. Like you mentioned, the MacIver Institute is on there. The Badger Institute. We've nationally got the Institute for Justice, who's helping us fight this. There is a tourism group called the Wisconsin Ag Tourism Association, who represents a lot of these event wedding barns. Yeah. They've been doing a lot of work on it. So, we put out our own coalition memo explaining why this provision of the bill is simply bad, and asking them to take it out. And so, trying to get the word out there and trying to work with lawmakers to hopefully get those amendments pushed forward.
Very good, sir. Well, the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, I can tell you firsthand, has been doing a lot of work this summer, as sleepy as the summer may be for all kinds of things in government. There's still a lot of activity going on that the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty has been keeping a close eye on, keeping track of, and plenty of litigation filed to check the abuses of government. Appreciate your time, sir. Keep up the good work.
Thanks for having me on, man. Have a great day.
Absolutely, you too. Lucas Weber, he is deputy counsel at the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty. They're raising concerns about this big bill.